Hello everyone, this is Mimi from Mimi's Worms. Today we're going to show you what to do when you get your worms once they've been shipped to you. There's a couple of things that you need to know, like if you've ordered a bag, a worm bag or a worm bin or a sub pod or any type of bin that you were going to put your worms in, but you don't have it yet, it hasn't came yet, but you've got your worms. What do you do? So we're going to tell you that scenario, and then also for those of you that already have your bins set up when you get your worms, a lot of you don't understand what you need to do. So we're also going to be talking to you about the live guarantee that we offer you. First of all, that live guarantee only covers the fact that they arrive to you alive. Now that does not mean that you have the worms for a week or two or 3 or 4 days or whatever, and then you contact us and tell us that your worms are dead, that they arrived dead or whatever. You have 2 hours from the time you receive them, and we actually get that information once it's delivered. Pause it. Okay, so we're back. We had to get the little one taken care of. As you know, Tabitha just had a new baby. He's about 8 weeks old, and so we keep him up here with us. We don't want to send him to daycare yet. But anyway, so back to the live guarantee. First of all, if those worms are viable, like you can make out that they're a worm, but they're just not moving around, that's normal. Mainly because your worms are stressed. If they're red wigglers, they don't move around a whole lot anyway. They're pretty docile, and so they're not going to do a lot of jumping and wiggling to begin with. So as long as, if they're not stinking or they don't look like mush, more than likely those worms are alive. They just need to be acclimated into their new home. They need to be hydrated back up because they've been in dry peat moss, and therefore you need to give them some water, and then we ask you to wait 24 to 48 hours before you determine that they're actually dead. Now, does that mean that if once you first get them that you don't need to contact us in those 2 hours? No, that does not mean that. If you feel there's a problem at all with your order, you need to notify us within 2 hours for your live guarantee to be validated. If that's the case, we are going to need a picture of your shipping label, and we're going to need a video or a picture of the worms. That's so we can validate that this order did indeed come from us, and that we prefer a video because we want to see if the worms are moving around or if they're viable, or if we need to just kind of educate what you need to do. But we don't guarantee that you can keep your worms alive. We don't guarantee that your worms won't crawl out of your bin and find a better home, or if you're putting them in an in-ground system, that your worms won't crawl away into that material to the point that you can't find them. And a lot of times people are buying a 1/4 pound of worms and they're putting them in this big space and expecting to come back the next day and see their worms still in this little old pile, but they've done dispersed into this whole new world. So you're thinking that your worms died, but they haven't died. They've just left from where you put them. So make sure that you are contacting us within 2 hours because we have that time stamp from the Postal Service that lets us know when you're getting them. The second thing is, we do not guarantee them to be live if they were left in a mailbox or on a front porch. So you need to make sure someone's home to get your worms. It's a good idea to ask your mail person or leave them a note in the mailbox to let them know that you're expecting live worms, to please ring your doorbell or knock on the door so that you can get these worms inside right away. Especially if your mail person delivers late in the day. Now, if your mail person does deliver late in the day, it's really best to have us to hold them at the Postal Service and let you go pick them up That way they're not riding around in a vehicle where the sun's beating down in that vehicle right on those worms. That is definitely gonna cause your worms to die in shipment. So we want to take care of you. We give great customer service, but we do need a few things from you in order to get these worms there alive. So please do not contact us if you have not followed those guidelines, because we do not guarantee live deliveries outside of our policies. So make sure you understand that. And that's pretty much the standard in the worm industry. So make sure you read that live guarantee policy. We send out 2 or 3 automated emails to let you know what you need to do in the event of a dead delivery. So there's no reason for you not to know and how to go about what you need to do in order to get that to us. So anyway, so I've got my worms in. My bin is not ready for whatever reason, whether I didn't receive it yet or I just haven't took the time to build it yet. So what do I do? A couple of things you can do. We're going to go ahead and open this box. This is the way the worms will come to you. One of the things we have is a sticker here to let your postman know these are live worms. We have holes in our boxes so the air can flow while they're in shipment. The heat can come out as need be and what have you. You're going to have your invoice in there, and you're going to have a couple of guides in here. How to care for your worms, if anything goes wrong with your worms, what you need to do next, and again, what you need to do when you first get your worms. Now, if you haven't gotten your bin yet and your worms has come, a couple of things to do here is first take your worms inside, get them out from outside. We've started shipping these with egg cartons because it saves us time on having to pay people to shred cardboard for us. So you're going to see this more and more. You can actually use this. You can just rip it up into small pieces, moisten it up, put it in here, take and pour your worms out of your bag into here. If it's only for a day or two, moisten them up from there, and then put them in your bin as soon as you can get it up and ready. Now for those of you that it's going to be, say you get them on Wednesday, it's going to be Saturday before you can get to them. What you can do is you can take, if you cut this on the short side, this, you can save this bag if you want to use it for something else. It's just like a feed sack. You just undo it. So I've got my worms. I've got my bin set up, and we're going to use this as an example today. Well, before we do that, another thing you could do is you could use a coffee can. If it's going to be a few days before you can put your worms in whatever it is that you've purchased, you would just take and pour your worms out into this, which I'll just go ahead and do that to show you. You get, with your worms, you get peat moss, because we ship them in dry peat moss. So you could put them in a coffee can like this. Now this is 2 pounds of worms here. And then you just take a spray bottle, and you just want to spray the top. You just want to get that moist. And with one being this tall, you might want to pour a little water in there, but you don't want to pour too much. But you just want to moisten that down so that you can rehydrate your worms. Now, I would prefer you use something with a little more surface area, especially for 2 pounds of worms. And here we just have some wet shredded cardboard and some coconut core in here. And let's say that your worm bin came in and this is your worm bin. Probably a little bit bigger, but when your worms come in, you just want to take them and place them on the top. Okay, you don't want to put these, you don't want to work these down into the bed. What you want to do is you want to put these on the top. You want to spread them around. You want to look at them. You want to make sure that you do have live worms. Now, if this is stinking really bad and you can't tell it's worms, it's just a bunch of mush, don't put that in your worm bed. The worms have already started decomposing, and it's going to make your bed get hot. But here you just want to spread your worms out on the top. That's all you want to do. Then you want to take your water and you just want to spray the top down. That way you can rehydrate your worms back up. And here I got 2 pounds in here, so I'm going to give them a good bit of water because that peat moss is dry. Now what's below is already moist, so these worms are going to work themselves down. So then you just leave them alone and let them do their thing. Now if you come back in say an hour or 2 and these worms are still on the top, then more than likely they didn't make it. But if they've worked themselves down, then you know that they arrived alive. But if you have any doubts, within those 2 hours you need to contact us, and then we can wait 24 to 48 hours just to make sure that they didn't move down into that material. But 9 times out of 10, if the worm is viable, like you can tell that these are worms, they're going to be alive and well. They may not move around real fast to start with because they are stressed. They've been in shipping, so you can expect that. You can expect them to not be very lively, especially if they spent 4 or 5 days in shipping. Then sometimes that happens because once they leave us and we turn them over to the Postal Service, we no longer have control of what happens to those worms between us and you. So for the most part, we get really good service with the USPS. Unfortunately, they don't guarantee us a live delivery. So if they do show up DOA, that's just a complete loss to us. So for those of you that wonders why worms can be expensive, you have to have something built in to your pricing for those things that happen during the year for that. So we're going to let these sit. I'm going to come back in say 5 or 10 minutes and show you how these worms move down, and so you'll know what to look for when you see those. So my camera person's going to show you how these worms look. This is them just being poured out, and I can already tell they're moving down. But another good thing too is if you have a light that you can have over them, because sometimes when you first get them and they're real stressed, they may try to crawl out. So it's good to have a light over them. You can put a piece of paper towel or something, a lot of people use newspaper, but you want to leave a little gap around the edges so that the light can shine through on the outer edges. That way the worms will kind of collaborate here where it's dark at and not around the edges. That'll kind of keep them in until they get acclimated. Once they get acclimated in the bed, usually within a week, they don't generally go anywhere. If you do put something like this over the top, you definitely would like to moisten that down as well. You could put a worm blanket on the top. We actually sell worm blankets as well. But anyway, we'll be back in just a little bit to show you how the worms are going to move down. Alright, it's been about 5-ish minutes, maybe 3 to 5 minutes. As you can see, the worms are already all moving down. There's a little bit of moisture around the edge here where we sprayed it, So you're going to see some worms want to travel around this edge because worms are going to go where the moisture's at. So if you have moisture around the edges, you're going to see some worms move into that. But this is how you would know for sure that your worms are alive, because if they were not alive, they would still be sitting on the top, not moving, and definitely start stinking. So that's what you would do if you get your worms before you get a bag, or if you get your worms and you don't really know how you're supposed to put them in. Always put them on the top. Do not work them into the bin that you have. And another thing is most people overfill their bins when they first setting up their worm bin. Remember, the worms stay in the first 6 inches of soil or material, so you don't need but about 3 to 4 inches to start your worm bin, and then you start adding an inch or two each feeding, or every 3 to 4 days, every week, whatever your schedule is on feeding. But like I said, as you can see, these worms have gone down, no problem there. So now you know what to do when you get your worms, how to put them in your bin. If you were putting these outside and it's a bright sunny day, you really want to put them in your garden when the sun starts going down, and put them in the garden on the top just like we did here. But then you want to put a piece of moist cardboard over the top so that the sun's not beating down on your worms and they have time to go down into the garden. Otherwise that sun can kill your worms. So try to do it at sundown or very early morning, before that sun really comes out and gets really hot and starts beating down on them. I would even encourage that if you got an in-ground system like the sub pod or the worm tower, whatever, making sure that you're not putting that in at the very hottest part of the day. But anyway, that's it, guys. Just remember, if you haven't liked, subscribed, or hit that notification bell, do so now. And until next time, y'all have a great day.